Hey y'all, hey, welcome to Dread Central. We are doing Black History Month because it is an event here, thanks to Girl That's Scary. And today I am here with some of my favorite people who also happen to be freelancers like myself. And we'll talk about some things that are very, very important and very, very near and dear to Black freelance journalists. I'm excited. This is going to be fun. Might be a word. Informative is definitely a word. Healing, hopefully. We'll see. For those of you who don't know me, and you shouldn't know me, so that's fair. I am Sharai Bohannon. I write for Dread Central. I write for Horror Movie Blog. I write for Horror Press LLC, and I'm basically a writer for hire if you're hiring. I also have some podcasts and things off top. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm gonna pass it to Wi-Moto.
Hello, everyone. I'm Wi-Moto Nyoka. I'm the founder of Dusky Projects. I produce and create horror and sci-fi works for young adult and adult audiences. You can find me at Dusky Projects on Instagram. That's the only one platform that I'm on because all the other ones give me hives. My pronouns are she, her, ella, and I think that's all for right now. Yeah, so I'll pass it over to Mo.
Hi, I am Mo Moshaty. I am a screenwriter, author, and lecturer in horror cinema, specifically women's trauma within horror cinema. I'm also a co-producer of Nick's Horror Collective's 13 Minutes of Horror. That was a short film festival film set that we pitched out to women identifying and non-binary creatives to create 60-second films. Both of those films landed on the Shudder channel as our streaming sponsor, so that was incredible. Part of Nick's Horror Collective, which is for women over 40 who are part of the neurodivergent LGBTQ+ sect. And we created 13 Minutes. We also have a fellowship with Stowe Story Labs for women identifying creatives in the genre because the accessibility is easy and people should just do it. And we've also created a magazine called Night Tide Magazine, which is focusing on highlighting historically marginalized creatives within the horror genre. And I lecture internationally, again, on women's trauma within horror cinema. So that's me. Oh, yeah, my pronouns are she, her. You can find me at Mo Moshaty on most socials, Instagram, the artist formerly known as Twitter, and Blue Sky. I'll pass it over to Dani.
Wow, how am I supposed to follow up Wi-Moto and Mo? So, hi everyone, I'm Dani Bethea. I am the former editor-in-chief of We Are Horror magazine. I'm actually wearing one of the hoodies right now. I am the horror sommelier and pop culture pontificator. So, I write about a plethora of things, but definitely some things that probably got me on the map were definitely my horror contributions. So, I've written a ton. I've actually written for Dread Central. Thank you so very much. I've written for Gaily Dreadful when they have their queer writers forum. I've written for Rely on Horror, Super Jump, Uppercut Crit. Some of these are gaming magazines, but they have been horror games. So like The Last of Us and some other things that I've written about. I've been published in 2 different books, The Women of Genji Kohan Weed's Orange is the New Black, specifically about the season that shan't be named and the downfall of that show. Also, I've been featured in studies in the fantastic Lovecraft country. I've also been featured in Monstrum, the journal out of Canada, and a few other things. So I've got writing here, there, and a little everywhere. You can find me at Dani Bethea on Medium. Also on I'm only on Twitter, so sorry about that, people. I'm still there on the sinking ship of Twitter. And my link to my bio for my writing is also there. And you can also just Google my name and all my stuff will come up, which is actually really creepy to me. Cool, but creepy. So, all right. On with the panel.
Yeah, make sure you follow all of our panelists because like they're all fun and they're smart and they write cool shit. And so you want that. Even if you're just like a casual reader, you want cool shit every once in a while, right? So first question. What was your journey to becoming a critic, reviewer, essayist? Because I know some of us do more of certain parts of journalism than others. And are you full-time now? Or do you have to juggle multiple things? Let's throw it to Dani and work backwards because I threw it the other way around first.
I think I heard me. Is that right? I had like a little glitch there. Oh, okay.
Oh, you're good. I also talk fast. It's not helpful for anybody's Wi-Fi.
No. I mean, that was, I guess, the speed of light. I don't know, speed of light internet, I guess. Well, I actually started writing because I got burned out from college and grad school. Note to everyone, don't try and do college and grad school straight through without any kind of break. So just warning to the wise. So actually, I just wanted to finally write what I wanted to write outside of the academic structure. And I kind of just threw myself out there, like, to see who was, hiring, who needed writing. And I really just wanted to get my feet wet with the whole thing. So I started writing for Rely on Horror, and I got my feet wet there, writing, different articles about like video games or horror pieces or things that were coming out. And then, that spiraled into, writing for this is no longer, sadly, it no longer exists. Something Ghoulish, which became Ghoulish Media, which, we had a big curated site there and writing and podcasts. And I just kind of was writing for them and then started writing on my own platform on Medium. And then it just kind of spiraled and snowballed from there. So, yeah.
Gonna throw it to Mo.
Oh, it's my turn. I forgot like a few key things. Come on, Matt. 9 minutes into the panel. I forgot that I'm the editor-in-chief of Nighttime Magazine. That was probably really important to say. Especially as freelancers, we spin so many plates. So it's when somebody, we want someone so much to care about all the things that we're doing, and somebody says, tell me a little bit about yourself. And it's like the record just goes backwards and you can't think about anything. Also that, but I've, in the literary space too, I have a book out called Love the Sinner. I've also been in 160 Black Women in Horror that was published last year. Only alphabetically am I after Toni Morrison, and I was very excited about that. Has nothing to do with my talent for writing next to hers. But I will
call it now. It's fine.
It's fine. I'm going to take it. And hardcover and softcover, it's on Amazon. But my journey actually was a pretty bumpy one. For horror, which we all know, I'm sure we'll get into later, that I started with a horror outlet that shall not be named because I'm trying to be the mayor person. And they were throwing me a lot of pieces, but wanted me to cover a lot of things, but wouldn't send me to the events that they were having. It was like very markedly confusing and very... just very separatist. And I had called them on it, and they said, well, these opportunities really should go to people who are really in the trenches, which meant 20-year-old white men. And I had a really hard time with that. So I took my toys and I went to other outlets, and I have bylines at Fangoria and Dread Central, Ghouls Magazine in the UK. And what I've really found with that is there's always a place, as much as it is like kind of like pulling through the rubble, trying to find, that one shining pebble that's going to give you space, which is really, really hard in this point in time, because at 2020, we were supposed to be elevating marginalized voices. That was everybody's bag, right? And we're still trying hard to find our way. But for me, it was having to say, this is what I have. This is what I see that you're not doing. This is what I see that you're not doing from people that look like me. And how do we work together to remedy that? And I feel like that's great that I was able to get into those places. But I also feel like I did the lion's share of the work to get myself in those places. And it wasn't just off of me pitching. And it felt a lot like, as grateful as I am, it felt a lot like being interviewed for a position. I was like, tell us why you feel like you would be a great fit here. And we shouldn't have to do that at this stage of our work. because there's definitely groups of people that don't have to work that hard to get where they are. And for some strange reason, it seems to be an epidemic that we keep going through this. So my journey has been, very great, and working with great people. Like I said, Fangoria and Dread Central has been fantastic. And like I said, Ghouls Magazine over here. But one of my really big drivers for creating Night Tide, because Night Tide is my brainchild, is just sticking it underneath the Nyx Horror Collective banner, because we want to be as accessible to as many people as possible, and especially marginalized creatives. But it was because I was tired of pitching. And to be honest, we're not all like, I would say, no, I'm not full-time working on a magazine I don't get paid for. Yes. Full-time ducats and dollars. No. But I would say that I just got tired of pitching and being like, this is a really great idea. This is a really great listicle. This is super timely. Let's talk about this, and just it being crickets. And that's really hard, especially if, for me, coming from like a lecturing background and an analysis background, and being like, here's things people haven't thought about this film or this theme or these strain of things. And people are just like, but I just want to talk about like the 10 things you should be watching tomorrow. And it's like, okay, well, that's fine. It's all fine. There's my little dumpster on fire over there. It's all fine. But I think that my journey has been pretty solid and very self-sought, because that's one of the hardest things I think in this tract, is really having to almost oversell yourself, where most people don't have to do that. So that's been my journey so far. And I took it about 30,000 feet and finally brought that puppy in. So I'm going to pass it over to Wi-Moto.
Thank you for that. Thank you both, Dani and Mo, for sharing. Do we just say Mo Moshaty, or is it just like Mo for the first? Like, how do you like to be?
Oh, it's just Mo.
Okay. I was like, Mo Moshaty sounds like
it's musical. I can dig
it. Yeah, like you're staging, or like a singer. Yeah. So here's funny. This is what's funny. I didn't know that I was an essayist until I got this invitation for this panel. So I actually didn't even think of myself that way. I think of myself primarily as a fiction, that I write speculative fiction. And I always say, like, Dusky Projects and myself, I write for theater, audio, and film. And then sometime, I don't even talk about these other like bylines, that I have one for Dread Central, that I'm a regular contributor for Last Girls Magazine. Like, that's like my special thing over here, that for some reason I in fact I don't know, just now as I'm listening to all of you, I'm like, oh, I guess if I'm on this panel, that means that I in fact do this thing. So I feel like that there's a lot to unpack there, of like why I didn't even think that, and how I got started was really because you told me that Dread needed some pitches, and I was like, okay. And that was how I got started. So via my friends and their invitation and their belief that I could do it, and me being like, whoa. And the same thing with the editor over at Last Girl. She was just like, hey, do you want to do this? And I was like, cool, yeah. And then I do that. Because, initially I was just like, I don't know if anybody wants to hear what I think about anything. This is just like me talking as I would with friends. Like, well, what's the thing that I like mull around in my brain? And then I'll be like, what do you think about this as a way to attack this theme, or what you're looking for? But I feel like there's a lot in there of just being like, well, no one's going to want to hear what I have to say. Like, already, that I kind of, that's the first thought, which is why it's like, no, if it's fiction, that's the thing I can push. And I have, most of my published work is short stories. They are short stories in anthologies, and not necessarily, which is another way of telling people what I think, but it's not as upfront. It's like coded. I'm like, I'm not really just coming right out and being like, this thing here. So yeah, my experience has been pleasant only because it's been with my friends. I have not, in fact, tried to go to any place and be like, hey, you should listen to this. You should take this idea. I think because I'm already doing that in other spaces and receiving enough rejection as it is, that I just didn't want to really add another group of people to give me crickets about the words that are coming out of my mouth. So I was like, I don't need that. But yeah, that's an interesting little thing I'm realizing. I'm like today years old as I'm coming into understanding this right here. So that's my journey that's apparently ongoing right in front of you live on StreamYard. Thank you.
I love that so much. No, like obviously I I relate to a lot of the things I just heard because what's ever different, whatever changes, nothing. And so like I too started out on like my own Medium because people weren't paying me or they were like hiding my articles until they were too late to print. And I was like, I'm gonna just put it up myself and see if my friends will read it and I get some quarters because Medium was mystical when I started doing that in 2016. I was like, I don't understand how this math goes. I don't understand where these quarters come from. Sometimes I get real money, yay. And I also had issues with some places, and we'll get to that section later, which is another reason why I was like, I don't want to rely on people anymore. But like you, Miss Women, you definitely, I remember last year because I was like, yeah, that's a freelancer. And you're like, no. And I was like, are you lying to me? I don't understand this lie. You've never not pitched anything or not written anything that wasn't, you should be more, words, blah. You should be pitching more. You should be writing more because you have such an analytical mind. And I think one of the things that upsets me the most about all of our journeys is that like we had to figure out we have the skills because the people who do the things that we're doing don't look like us. And so they're always telling us that our ideas and our opinions don't matter. And that's why I'm always a little bit angry. And that's why I keep starting podcasts because I found out my opinion does matter and people are going to hear it. But to get us back on track for this moment, it's just really fucking hard to be Black in these spaces. Like we've all been in various PWIs. I've quit multiple jobs inside and outside of the arts because I'm just like, I'm not going to do this abuse for minimum wage. So I think it's important that we talk about what makes us do this because it's hard. It's hard. Sometimes we are applying to places that have not had a Black person posted in who knows how long. Sometimes we're having to work with people who've never spoken to a Black person on a regular basis. And so they are perpetuating the same issues that we normally quit jobs and things for. So what makes you get up every day and be like, I'm going to do this again, or I'm going to pitch again this year because a friend told me there's a pitch. What gets you to the keyboard? What gets you excited about it? What do you hold on to make it worth it? I'm going to start with Mo this time because I've picked on everybody else.
What makes me get up and say, we're going to do it again? Honestly, just staying on people's necks. It's a forte. And I feel like, unfortunately, we have to go where the doors open a little bit, right? So for me, it's been repetitively pitching the places that I know I've written before. And I've had some good and some bad experiences with that. I've had experiences where it's just like, oh, well, I wrote for them like 3 months in a row and I'm going to pitch this idea. And it's just like, okay, cool. I guess we're not doing that one. And it's been very, eye-opening to be like, did you want it? Or do you feel like we gave you like 3 months, brown girl, like take a seat? Let the others play a little bit. Because sometimes it does feel like that. Do I read into it that might be? How can you not in these spaces? Because it's really, really hard. I've actually had someone say to me, that topic seems a little aggressive. Which was, a topic I'm going to write for my own magazine next month. So take that or leave it. But it was about, Black generational trauma and horror cinema. Like, we wanted to talk about Eve's Bio. I wanted to talk about Candyman. I wanted to talk about, all of those pieces. I wanted to, really talk about Nope. Because it was right after Nope had just come out. And I was like, we got to talk about this. And they were just like, ooh, aggressive. So I think for me, it's just been, you know, going where you already have a door open doesn't always work. But I feel like if we are not louder and if we are not vocal enough, we will be forgotten about. And I feel like that's what certain pockets of this industry are hoping for. Because we know that there's been a lot of people that aren't Black and brown, that cover Black and brown news, that cover Black and brown shows, cover Black and brown film. We know working in the industry, there are people that are not Black and brown that are working on Black and brown shows, writing Black and brown dialogue. Like, it is just, it's part of what the industry we've stepped into, unfortunately. And I think that the more that you are tooting your own horn and making your own presence known and widening your elbows and creating space for yourself, I'm going to stay in your face. I'm going to bother you. I want you to hate the taste of my name until you give me some space to say something. Give me an article, give me a place, and maybe you won't hear from me for another 6 months, but don't think that I'm not going to bug you again, because this is what we have to do, unfortunately. Like, I wake up every day and do this magazine because I know a lot of the things that I've written, because I'm doing 100% of the curation, editing, and everything. I am night tight at the moment. And that's not to you know, put anything down or kvetch or complain, but it's because, you know, I'm so passionate about getting voices like mine out there and putting calls out for, like, I know there are analysts and Black horror academics. Where are you? Come write for my magazine. I know that there are Black podcasters. Come write for my magazine. I know that there are Black librarians. What are you recommending? Like, I want people to know that, and I want my magazine to be the place where you see it, because we're having such a hard time even just saying, hey, there's a Black librarian out of, you know, Kansas, recommends these 5 YA horror books. Let's do an article about them. Oh, we'll already have somebody talking about the new, like, Stephen King novel this month, so we're not like, it's just, it's hard to keep hollering above the noise, but I'll go horse. I don't care. Well, that's me. Maybe you shouldn't have started with me. I'm just full of it tonight.
I'm happy with that, because I'm always saying spite throughout things. Spite, yeah. Anything is possible through spite. That's what gets me up in the morning. It's why I do what I do, because I'm told I can't do it and I shouldn't be in those places. And so I'm going to be in those places. And while I'm in those places, I'm going to bring other people, and hopefully someday it'll get easier. Probably after I'm dead, because nobody wants to change anything. But someday. Wi-Moto, what makes you do the freelancing thing when you do the freelancing thing?
I get so excited when, like, I read anything that any of you have written, right? And so it's just when you look at a space and you're like, look, I exist in it because she's there, he's there, they're there, they are there. So I do it for that. It's kind of chasing a rush where it's like, remember what it felt like when there was no one, and then you saw that person and they were there, just an exclamation point in an ocean of milk. And and how excited you were when you saw them. That feeling. Be about, like, making that feeling again and again and again and again and again. So whether you're supporting those folks or you are that person, and then somebody can look at you and do, like, to create more of those opportunities and create more of those moments for more people. So I'm chasing a high.
I love that, because after spite, that is another thing that I do love. We do. I get more excited for y'all's articles than I am my own. I'm just like, ooh, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I gotta share my shit today too. Otherwise, nobody will know I did anything. Dani, what makes you do this?
You know, you can tell we're writers because of those beautiful metaphors that you all just laissez-faire, just sprinkled throughout your explanations. But, you know, similarly, because I noticed that there was just this void of not only, you know, Black folks, but, like, queer folks, like folks with other points of view, just like on, you know, like a cavalcade of things. And I'm just like, like you all talked about, when you see the same listicles over and over and over, when you see the same, it's the anniversary of this movie, the same thing written every year, every 5 years or every 10 years or whatever, right? I'm making it seem like we're 1,000 years old. But, you know, when you're a constant reader, you notice the sameness, right? Like you feel like, is this the same person writing for the same outlet, or just the fact that there was no difference of opinion, that like it was just this void that I said, you know what, I'm just gonna throw my hat in the ring and see what happens. And I honestly didn't care like what happened afterward. Is, you know, I didn't care if like vitriol came, you know, with some of the things I wrote, or like, because you're online, you think like, oh my goodness, are people going to know who you are? Are they going to find out where you live? But like, no, I just said, you know what? It's what's done is done. I was like, life is too short. And that was really, I think, the biggest like kick in the pants in the world was pre-pandemic. That was one type of writing, right? That you didn't feel a kind of urgency, right? So, and then the tumult of 2020 and everything that came packaged into that, it was just like, oh, you know what? If this is the last thing I ever write, I better make sure that it is spectacular, right? And I do what I do so that I can, I don't know, maybe learn how to say no a lot more. That writing in the way that I have and the way that I want to has allowed a lot of space for me to, I don't know, it's kind of imbued me with a maturity that, I don't know, that maybe beyond my years. Like it's writing and pontificating in this way, and being, as you all mentioned, your own editor, reading what you've written out loud, which is key. I wish more people did that. You I don't know, you see things and you learn things and you glean things that I don't know, your third eye opens. I don't know. I think you all know what I'm talking about when you get in the writing zone, the editing zone. You know, you may not want any distractions, right? You want, I'm when I write, I'm literally, if it's all day. I don't take a break because my mind is just going. You know what I mean? So like when I'm glued, I'm there. I'm there for however long it takes. Maybe a bathroom break, but even then I might take my laptop with me and I'm just like, nope, I have a stream of consciousness. I've got to keep going. But yeah, I think that's it. Maybe we'll talk more about uh the horror experience as far as us being writers or previous academics. I hope we do, because I just wrote a piece on that you all might have read. You know what, I'll just talk about it now. Okay, I wrote a piece recently. It's on Medium right now if you want to go read it. There's no paywall. You can give me a clap if you like. That's the money that Sharai was talking about. So if you see a piece on Medium, or if you see something on Substack, I think there's some other ways that you can kind of clap for people over there, or throw digital coins or something at them without swiping a credit card or whatever. So the piece I wrote was entitled Black Women Academics Are in Crisis. In particular, we have had 4 Black women that I'm aware of that have recently died from the academy. And the fact that we had 2 back-to-back in 2023 and then 1 to start off the beginning of this year, and they all experienced the same thing. All 4 of them experienced the same things. If it wasn't push out from the academy, it was harassment from people who work in administration or the boards, or that whole structure. They faced misogynoir. So like if it wasn't, you know, them being Black, it was them being a woman, it was both. It was mental health issues that, you know, that they tried to get assistance with that they weren't listened to. So it was just a light bulb that like I couldn't not write about it at the start of this year when this happened to the most recent professor. That, you know, if this is what's happening in the academy, then what's happening to us that are kind of here like on the ground, or that aren't in quote unquote the lofty, you know, professor positions or have a plaque on a door somewhere or whatever, right? That we are probably people that no one knows about or even knows exists. So like I thought about us in that moment, that I was like, oh my gosh, how are my like writing friends like doing right now? Because I know some of the opportunities are like drying up. I know that like it just seemed like an immediate just like cut off, like 22 that started to peter out, 21 for seemed like 2020, 2021. It seemed like the opportunities coming. But like, I'm sure you all have seen that you're like, you all were like beating my door down. I don't hear any more knocking at the door. Or like, you know, my inbox, as far as like emails and things being sent to my DMs on Twitter. And I'm just like, how very interesting. So, I don't know. I don't know.
It's a kind of fatigue that sets in on people. You know, they were really galvanized in the shutdown in those 2021, 2022, 2020, 2021. And then by the time we get to the end of 2021, the fatigue is already settling in because it's not because racism is huge and it's going to take a long time to unravel it and heal from it. And healing is not glamorous and it's not fast. Yeah. So I think I was saying this to somebody last night where it's like people want things to be different, but they don't want to change.
Well, there you go.
And so that's kind of like what we're coming up on. It's just like everybody's ranting and raving and crying about how we want it to be different. It's like, yeah, but you have to change.
Yeah, you have to do the work. You have to do the work.
Listen.
And to Dani's point, I'm sorry, Sharai, go ahead.
Go ahead, because I was going to have a whole other rant. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Just to piggyback off of what Dani was saying, like as a lecturer, especially in cinema, like in genre cinema, and my other hat is a cognitive behavioral therapist. I have my behavioral science degree. And marrying those two together is a huge passion of mine. But I lecture more internationally than I do U.S. colleges because I can't get in the door at U.S. college. And I've never had an issue. And not to say like every abstract I turn in, everybody wants me to talk. They don't. But I've had the lion's share of my work has been, you know, out of Midlands here or Sheffield here, and like at the UK has been, you know, talking about Candyman with a college from the UK, talking about Yellow Jackets with a university out of the UK. You know, we're talking about central, you know, American made film and television, but I can't get into an American university to talk about my syllabus, which is called From Inside the House, which basically some female characters through horror cinema, you can put them in 5 buckets. You can put them through paranoia, hysteria, grief, revenge, possession, but loss of body autonomy, lack of control. Like that's really what I want to talk about, and how we can be better as screenwriters to not be so tropey sometimes, especially from an ethnic standpoint. Because not all ethnic people are mystical and magical. Please stop doing that.
that movie that shall not be named, the Magical Society of Negroes or Magical or whatever.
You don't have to be mystical all the time. We're exhausted. But I think that I've been having so much trouble and so much abutment to me being like, this is, this is my syllabus. I've talked about this in this prestigious university. I've taken snippets of this syllabus and talked about this in this university. And they've been just like, it's a very lukewarm response. And I'm not saying that I'm some kind of laureate that's like out here, just doing it and winning all kinds of like, accolades. But it's interesting to see that in UK and Europe, I'm having more of a success lecturing as a woman of color academic than in the States. So it's, what is that divide? Because we sit there and be like, racism's everywhere, which it is. Stop saying it's not. But I feel like it's the pressure of being above my station academically, or being told that I am talking from above my station academically, as a woman of color, but also being more knowledgeable about horror cinema than my male colleagues, and some people being really threatened by that. Because I remember this was back in the day, and I'm kind of going on a tangent there. Neurodivergency, yay. Going on a tangent, but I had a colleague that also writes, this was about 3 or 4 years ago, and we were talking about that and the difference between it. And we had a little bit of an argument. And, when you have an argument about somebody and it's not everybody that does this, but for women, it's like, what's your favorite band? Or what's your favorite song? Or you don't know that game. And it's like, now everybody's got to play the Google game and like make sure everybody's right. But we had a conversation about that. And it was, I can't remember the exact factoid, but it was just like, oh no, it was this, it came out this year. I feel like it came out this year and blah, blah. You might be thinking of like a different film, or it was just like, there was an argument, and it was just like, but it was in front of somebody that they respected. And I literally, this person has not spoken to me since. I have not spoken to me since. So I'm just trying to get a hold of why it's, we're exhausted and, doing this every day, because we're swimming against the current every day. Mm-hmm. And that, that not only conditions you to be stronger, which people don't want, but it also makes you really, really, really tired of having to even run and jog through hoops for stuff. Like, it's just, if everyone was so gung-ho about, black square in their way into like a corner, because everybody put it on Instagram, like black square, black square, black square, cool. But everybody wanted our stories, and now nobody does. So I'm just trying to understand where that flip came from.
What I've noticed, what I've noticed about U.S. academia, because I definitely tried it and had to quit it. I took a job in Indiana that I shouldn't have taken. That was on me. In theater in general and freelancing and any job I've ever tried, what I've noticed is they like the idea of Black women on paper. They like us when we're trending, but the second we have an opinion, we are a problem. And I've noticed this because it's always not about the work. It's not like you're trading in lesser work, you're doing lesser things. It's just like, I get a vibe from you now. You don't seem happy. There's tone policing. And I'm just like, what year is it? There's, your face doesn't seem happy to be here. And I'm just like, is my face my job? If you want me to smile, you should pay me for acting. Or hire an actor, because I thought I was hired to teach children. I thought I was hired to run a box office. I know how to do it with a smile on. And so again, I think it just comes down to people like to be trendy and like they're allies, but they don't want to do any work. Because work is different than being an ally. We're seeing this play out right now, because at the time of recording this, white feminism is very loud, very fucking loud. And if you say anything, they get louder, and all of a sudden you're pitting women against each other. And it's like, we're women too. We also deserve awards and nominations. I'm just saying, Name me 5 Black directors while you're out here caping so hard for this one. But that is a different rant.
Quickly.
They can't. But they're like, I care about that too. Name one. Because this is the first time I've ever seen you tweet about an award show. You care today because she looks like you. Okay. So yeah, I think that this problem is in a lot of things, and it kind of is a nice little segue because we get it from the readers when we write anything that is about anything important to us, because they don't want to hear about Black people. They don't want to hear about Black movies. That's why Tales from the Hood is still tanking on Rotten Tomatoes, which is a crime. And so when we're getting it from the people who read for the places we're writing from, and then sometimes we get it from the places that we're writing from because they don't know how to support us, or they just say all the wrong things. Like, I worked for a place before I got into horror specifically, and he wanted me to write about blackface because he'd seen it a couple of times on TV and he had thoughts about it. This is a white man who has been a problem the entire 3 months I wrote for him. And when I said no, he turned to the one other Black woman who was my friend to be like, well, will you write it? And she was like, also no. And I was like, what is your problem? And so I just thought it'd be nice to talk about, well, not nice so much, but I thought it'd be worth it to just be like, what is the wildest shit somebody has said to you in these places you have written for? And you don't have to name names. I will, because I'm a Gemini. The place I tell people not to write is Book and Film Globe. He's awful. But you don't have to name anybody or anything. You could just sort of say, this sort of happened. However you feel comfortable.
Who wants to go first?
I guess I will, because I don't have any. I don't have. Thank God. I don't know how I've dodged. Lil Kim dodged like the bullets from that side of not only the internet, but because your stuff is out there, it goes out into the world. I think sometimes we forget that you don't know who's, reading something but not commenting, but they just may be tracking you, right? So like, thank God I've never had anything like that happen, but I've definitely had some people who've read my work and I've had to further educate them about an issue or a topic, and I think it helps. I haven't written for any places that have tried to police me or my thoughts or my words, or so if it hasn't been that where they've given me free reign to write what I want to write, or the opposite where it's been something on my own platform, you know what I mean? But I think one that kind of burns me up to no end. I know the second season of The Last of Us is coming. I'm so beyond done with that show. I wrote about how it's terrible and horrific for Black people and triggering as all get out. The game 1 and 2. And I thought, okay, this is just a one-off. Maybe they're going to have some Black people live in the sequel. And it was just like, oh no, we're going to kill more. So I wrote about it. I had thoughts about it. I did. And someone in the comment section was just like, are you sure? Are you? So the fact I had to, and thank goodness they weren't a toxic commenter, but occasionally some people in the comments who are just like, well, I need to, are you sure? Well, I don't know. But so, yeah, so people can do what they want to do regarding that show. That's my one. That's like, I have some things mentally that are on my list of like never watches, never engage with. That's, it's a powerful thing. The older you get, you learn how to block things out, learn how to ignore things. So that's one of them. I'm sorry, Last of Us. Sorry. I won't do it. I won't do it. I won't actively watch anything that is literally a remake of something where, and the fact that there's been no critique of it at all from, so see, I think what you all were talking about as well, that because there aren't any Black journalists that are on the payroll that can call this out, or if there are Black journalists there, they're not seeing what we may see because we have the language for what we're seeing, right? So Yeah, I also refuse to watch things that are like blatantly just like violent to Black people for just no reason or harmful or don't have any kind of nuance or whatever. So I won't actively go out of my way to watch a recreation of something that I know in the first place was violent. So that's all. That's all. See, that's why I have a relatively like happy smile on my face and not a whole bunch of gray hair, because I haven't been in the boxing rings like you all have yet. That's all. That's all.
I have an experience.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
My name is Mo. I have an experience. Hey,
Hi, Mo.
You're
Welcome.
special. So my experience was wild in the way of, I had written an article that they had asked me to write, the editor-in-chief of this outlet who runs a festival. I'll just let you glean from that. They run a festival. I've done an article about one of the movies, and then a video. I've done a lot of video journalism for them, talked to a lot of famous filmmakers, makers of Relic, Fried Berry, Bly Manor, cinematographers, things like just very, really sweet people. And I had written an article as a follow-up to This Is What's Happening at Sundance. This is what's going to go on at Sundance, as I was asked to. And then I had seen an article written by a guest writer that was praising two people in the horror industry that are known to be very abusive, very rape apologist. And it was written by a woman, which was weird for me. And I said, these people that she's praising are very, it's well documented that one of the people that we just interviewed, that's a really big issue. Like, why are we doing this? And the response was, I don't want to censor anybody. I feel like with this magazine that people should be able to say what they want. And I took that as, okay, first of all, this woman you just interviewed is not your friend. You are not their friend. You're okay with this woman writing a little 4,000 page article about these heinous people. And then when you're called on it, your thing is, I can't do anything about it, even though it's my magazine. And I was like, this is probably time for me to go. And I was like, oh, because at this point I was given credentials from them to cover Sundance, writing a run-up, credentials to cover Sundance. All of a sudden, I'm no longer going to Sundance, but one of their 22-year-old, every now and again columnists is now going to Sundance. And before you ask, yes, he is. And I had to bounce from that point. I was just like, you don't respect women. You don't, you're not going to censor anybody. It was just a weird vibe. It made me feel like really sick to my stomach. And I was like, and here's me, like, writing books and lecturing through cinema and talking to all of these people for 2 years for you. And you've bounced me out of a really cool opportunity for a woman of color to go be pressed somewhere, like Sundance, because I called you on your misogyny. And that was my experience. This was when I started pitching actively to other places. So yeah, in a way, thank you. But also, and it's still going on, and it's still putting on festivals every year. So yay.
I feel like that's one of the things that drives me the most, is because there are known people who shouldn't be working. And yet that's who you have to cover. That's who you have to talk about. And you can't say the things you need to say, even though the receipts are longer than my lifespan. And I'm just like, why? And I think that's one of the issues I have sometimes when I want to write it in a new place, because I'm just like, I don't want to talk about that movie. I know who he is as a person, and also it looks like a bad movie. So like, miss me on both counts.
If you could, please, thank you.
Right. What are some actionable items the few places we do enjoy working with could be doing? This is a general question. I'm not being like, come out here and be like, so-and-so at so-and-so could do this. I'm just saying, what are some nice actionable items that can be taken to make some of these places more welcoming, to encourage more Black people to pitch them in the first place?
I think where they place the information.
Yeah.
So that's sort of putting their opportunities in a very siloed. I mean, in general, like the algorithms are kind of siloing us anyway. So then be mindful of that and be like, how many people are actually, how many demographics am I reaching when I post this here, considering like everything else that we've clicked on and who probably, like all the things. So making an actual effort to get the information of whatever opportunities you have or invitations you want to invite to a wide ranging group of people. So I would say that that's one thing. And another thing, like, have, articles that are about all kinds of subjects outside of Women's History Month and Black History Month. There are other months in the year, and people of color exist 12 months out of the year, 365 days. We all still exist. So, and are looking at things with our eyeballs. So, just maybe switch your plan up a little bit. I don't know, have a meeting about that.
Also, stop asking for Black stories. Reason why I say that is there was a lot of calls out for, as we know, there's a lot of call out for work from Black creatives for how are you feeling on, what's going on. We're opening up our submissions to BIPOC this month. And it's like, why just this month? But also there was a call out, I remember, for flash fiction and short stories. And it was, we're looking for Black stories and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, but my question is for you to elaborate on Black stories, because is it stories by people that are Black? Or are you looking for like Candyman 2? Or are you, does everything have to, because it was through a genre magazine, and it was like, are you looking for everything to start at Cabrini Green? Or are you like looking for, because it's never both, it's one or the other. Like, it's, be clear about what you're asking. Are you asking for Black pain stories? Are you asking for creatives that are Black to just pitch you whatever they want? Is it sci-fi? Is it fantasy? Is it romance? Is it like, what do you want? And I think just the verbiage has to be clear. And if you can't make it clear, please ask somebody that is in the Black and brown community to write your copy for you so it resonates. And also, if you are editing people's AAVE, don't. Please don't do that. No, it's not wrong. No, you don't need to redline it. I meant to say that. Check with people that are writing this before you correct it and throw it up. Because I've had a lot of friends that have been like, this is what was said, or even if it's a short story, the whole thing has been changed to, vernaculars are missing, slang is missing, things are misspelled. And it's like, this is not the story. You've literally lightened it up just because you don't know what I'm trying to say, because you did not confer with me. So I think actionable things could be very, very clear on your call outs, be very, very clear on your editing. And just to piggyback off what Momoto says, put your calls in places that people can find them. Putting them down on itty bitty type or just doing them seldom through the year doesn't help. Put them in different places where people are doing their daily things, maybe just in the actual news and not just on your magazine. Like, spend money to, put a call out to actually other Black outlets, LinkedIn, articles in Medium, Newsweek. Like, we're reading other things. We're not just on like Blavity all day. Like, we're other places. So be more focused on, you know, hyper focus to everybody else. It's not just a tiny sect that we're talking about. So behave that way. I think sorry, the editing really that struck a nerve for me.
Listen, so I use a lot of pop culture references, and I thought Beyonce was safe. Beyonce is not safe, because I read something like, and we need to get information. And that sentence came back as something completely different. And I was like, I don't know what to do with my face. I've been paid. I'm just gonna go look into the sun.
Oh, it's sad. It's a sad state of affairs.
Not knowing what to do with your face is a real problem. That's
Yes.
like a real, there's so many times when I've been like, I don't know what to do with my face. I would turn the camera off. I have to like go plug something in now. And it's really just because, like, I mean, honestly, like, this was kind of the upside of the most recent apocalypse is the ability to turn your camera off, to fight at least my disability of not knowing what to do with my face.
Like, I know what we're talking about, and I'm glad it was somewhat hinted at. What was it in The Blackening? It's The Blackening, right? That we were talking about, or that they mentioned that we can communicate without even saying any kind of verbalization. We can say a lot with just a look. That even like you all were mentioning, just various types of AAVE we use is not violent or ableist, that it's our own language for us. So, yeah, all of those things. I agree. All of the actionable things that you all ticked off, like, that's a huge one. That's why, like, I kind of write about the gamut of everything, because I'm a nerd to the extreme. I mean, y'all see like my collection of like shoes from the Alien movies, right? Like, I've got like a little Nebula figurine from Guardians of the Galaxy, and a werewolf back there from American Werewolf in London, a Little Mermaid, McDonald's Happy Meal box that I didn't get besmirched with any grease. Like, I am a collector. I'm a hoarder of cool things that I like. So there are cool Black nerds out here. You know, I know there's like one with the famous YouTube channel, like Black Nerd. I forgot what his name is, but like, he's not the only one. and it's again another thing that like you all are mentioning, like, if the cool Black nerd or the Black nerd gets put on, it's usually like a guy. Like, it's not even a thought that like, oh, that's right, Black women can be nerds too. It's not even a thought that like crosses, you know, the mind, you know, that like you all even mentioned that like Black folks have been in this space, especially Black women have been writing about horror and sci-fi for before we were even born or even thought about, you know,
Decades.
Yeah, as cells in the universe. Like, I mean, we're coming back to this right now. Shout out to Octavia Butler. I saw the best Twitter post that was talking about what's happening right now. Shout out to Parable of the Sower. That things are coming to pass, that it's 2024. She mentioned it. I'm just like, how did she know the year, the date, and the hour? That's a Black superpower. Speaking of Black magic, like, we conjure things because we've lived through some horror, and you can just see, you know, like I said, about that third eye or about your intuition, which is also something that more people need to listen to, or get in contact with the ancestors to give it back to you. But yeah, shout out to Parable of the Sower. Like, that was like, it kind of made me sit back. I was like, oh, wait a minute, what year is it? I don't know what year it is. All these years are just stretching on for me. I had to look. I was like, oh, it is 2024, isn't it?
This is 2020 with a new wig. I keep saying that because
Yeah.
We're not fooled by the shake and go.
No, I perfected the shake and go. I see it. I'm calling her out. Like, this is the same damn year.
This is a Yarn Barn special. I'm not falling for it.
No, I moved the part. I
moved the part.
Yeah.
It's not.
Please don't.
But yeah, we're down bad. I mean, like, we can't even afford like an HD lace anymore. Like, we can't cover up anymore.
No. She brought out that last little of the pink hair oil she had in the back of her closet, thought she'd never use.
Shaking the can, like, shake.
Right? She's like, got it, get it. Yeah, move the part. Come to the side. She's the same year. To all these actionable items, I think that the simplest and biggest one is to answer the emails because people just don't. And so there's Black people pitching and nobody's checking those emails because before I found my places, I would pitch everybody. I still pitch everybody. But after I send so many things that don't get answered, I'm just like, either you don't like me or you don't like we. Either way, I have to move on. And you also have to hire the people you want to see in the spaces. You can't be like, we are looking for Black people and then have no Black people anywhere on your website because we noticed that too. And we're like, do I want to go send her the PWI? I do not. So I'm not going to do this.
Yeah. And there's a lot of companies out there that are, very like, we're really pushing like diversity initiatives. And then you look at like about section and you're just like, that's puzzling. I'm bamboozled. But just getting that out and like you said, putting folks that you want at the helm and by answering the email, by not putting your call outs for just a specific type of person, it's hard enough as I feel like as a woman journalist in horror. But also going through historically marginalized communities, LGBTQIA plus communities, like it's not just a box tick.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not there to fill out your company's census. Like it's not because the DEI people are coming to have a talk at your company. You got to hurry up and get some people in there. It's just been hard to. I had one that I pitched to a couple of months ago that has on their site, will respond within 7 days. I said months ago, I pitched this. And I was like, well, clearly that's a lie. So what is it? Because my email has my picture signature on it. So is that what it is? Because my name's pretty nondescript. It's Mo.
That sounds like a threat. Like sounds like Ringu. Like 7 days. Like
you're just gonna turn the camera like this, and it just gets really
But we honestly, I think we do have to acknowledge because this week, this is when we record this. Everyone, hi everybody in the internet. This is January the 26th that we are recording this, and this was the week of layoffs. The Los Angeles Times, the National Geographic, Microsoft Gamers, which also includes like developers, even people who like write for games, like who like write code and even just like write storylines for games, right? That like those storylines don't come out of thin air. Even sometimes like the bad writing, that's also a writer, a human writer, not yet AI yet, but this was the week of layoffs. And what really scares me the most about when big layoffs happen like this, and these huge shakeups, like with Condé Nast, actually that happened this week too, the big strike with Condé Nast and everything that falls under that, that this is going to traumatize some people to not potentially ever want to write again or not want to pitch anywhere, or thinking that my job precarity is shaky because a lot of the people, like I kept seeing it over and over, people I don't even follow, but my Twitter feed, I still call it Twitter. It's not X to me, Twitter. And I haven't updated it. So it still looks like Twitter for me. life hack. That I kept seeing over and over again on the timeline that like, me and all the Black and the Latino folks and some Asian folks here and there. Like a lot of us, the BIPOC, right, that you wanted, got the axe. How very interesting. How very, very interesting. Right. So this is a turbulent time when these various media companies are saying, oh, we don't have the money, but somehow you have all of these allocated funds for these things, but not for the people that actually keep the wheels greased, to keep the train in motion, like those same people that you said are in the trenches that you want to do this and have that. And I don't know, everybody, this week and like other things that happened in 2023 with other layoffs and other major magazine closures, especially like some of the feminist magazines that had been around for ages, some of the queer, magazines or queer or horror magazines or horror sites that said, sorry, we're going to have to shutter because the money's not there, the funding's not there, we can't get this, we can't get that. Like it's legitimately scary. And it, like when you phrase that initial question, like what kind of keeps us doing this? Maybe it's some sort of masochism or something, but like, I don't know. I'm gonna write until the wheels fall off, until like the 4 horsemen show up. But I'm in it for the long haul. As long as there's media out there, and especially media that needs critiquing, I'm gonna stay in it. I'm gonna bounce off the ring and keep my pen ready.
I think that's one thing that we forget to do. I don't say we as in the people in this panel, but I feel like as an industry, the critiquing has been waning.
Mm-hmm.
They know there's outlets that don't critique at all. They don't do any reviews. Which is interesting. I mean, it to each their own, but I feel like that's almost gives off like, we don't want to make anybody mad. We want to be friends with everybody. So we're not going to review anything, or we're not going to hurt anybody's feelings. And I don't think that criticism, film or television criticism or analysis even is meant to demean. It's just meant to, clarify. And if this is the theme you were going for, here's the ways you didn't achieve that. And I think that's fair. I mean, we all as journalists, we put our babies out there. You're going to read this, somebody's going to read this, and we're open to critique as well. But I feel like we can't be everybody's friend. And it gets really exhausting to try to keep that momentum up, because there's days where we're going to need somebody and we're going to turn around and there's not going to be anybody there. Even though, you went to bat for people or tried to keep, positivity up for maybe art that wasn't so great. And we can't keep doing that. And I feel like that might be one of the points of contention for hiring less marginalized creatives, Black creatives, is we don't have a problem telling you what's wrong with things. And it's not just like we're just gonna tell you what's wrong. It's just like this is the view, and it's not always either on your side, or it's just to clarify and educate. And I think that outlets might be afraid of the confidence of that. And if it comes down to you're waging your relationship with maybe a star or a filmmaker, you're wagering somebody's job. A new Black writer has to write something positive about it because this is your buddy, or you want this person's next movie as a screener. So you got to say this movie is good. I feel like where are we as an industry if we're continuously doing that? If it's relationship based as opposed to merit based, how long can you keep that train running?
Well, the thing is that nobody really knows how, no one knows what analysis is. Nobody really knows what critical thinking is because I used to work in arts education. It is because you are teaching the test and you are not teaching these things anymore. I was in the classroom actually having to create curriculum on teaching young people how to infer, Like actually just that is a skill. How do you infer when I say this, you can get the meaning? And, you know, a lot of kids not even just knowing how to do that because the literacy is so low. No one is making anybody read for pleasure, and they're not putting any books in front of them where they can see themselves in that story. And the list goes on and on and on. So now you've got generations of people who really like, there's a kind of, you know, Gabe Castro, who's at the Ghouls Next Door. They have this podcast where they're doing all the analysis, and they're very active about media literacy. And that's kind of like a whole goal of theirs, because they understand that there's a void there, that like people will watch things and not actually even know what they're seeing. So if you want to write an article about, like, I don't know, some sort of in-depth analysis on Star Wars, even the fans don't get it. Like, they'll be there all upset about a black Jedi. And I'm like, but what do you think the Empire is? Like, the aesthetic, they're Nazis. Like, this is a white supremacist. That's who that, it's a metaphor. Do you know what a metaphor is? Like, you have to, like, you know, so then we're going back to that. Like, this is a simile. This is a metaphor. This is the visuals that are going on. Look at the colors that they're using. Like, people, when, you know, the set designers really thought about this, but, you know, it's kind of falling on deaf ears or blind eyes in a way. So I think like that's also part of it too, is that people, you know, the fear of critique is because nobody knows what it is. No one knows how to have a conversation where they disagree and it doesn't devolve into fighting. Because of, I mean, we could go on and on as to why, but that skill is lost. So how can I have some kind of in-depth conversation with you about anything if you can't even see what I'm talking about? Like, I first have to start with, this is why the Death Star means, like, it's a symbol for, like, if I have to start there, then I can't even get to the part where I wanted to talk about whatever it was that I wanted to talk about. So I feel like this is like an epidemic of its own.
Yes, and on top of that, they get upset when you say anything negative. Like, I could give a 5-star review, note all the things that are correct, but if I say one negative thing, I hate movies and I'm a bitch, and we're taking it to Reddit. And I'm just like, I actually really liked it. I'm going to get a physical copy. I'm going to get it signed. I just said that the pacing was off. I don't know where all this is coming from. When you have an article go to Reddit, that is a unique experience. I'm just like, y'all cared that much that you're going to share it so it gets more views. So you can say racist things in this little thread that you think I'm not going to see, but I Google myself once a month because I know all you fools. For who, for why? For who, for why?
To what end?
What end is a question I ask a lot about a lot of things. Most things, almost all things, where I'm like, why are we doing this? What's the end game? And it's always, and people are always like, it's always a weird answer. Like, it's always been this way. Well, what other way would it be? And all this. And I'm like, what other way? I don't understand how folks act like people don't have ideas. I'm like, people have all kinds of ideas and they've pitched them. They're in that email that you didn't read. So there is clearly another way if you would just read the thing and then implement the thing. But yeah, to what end? To what end? I have a question about a lot of these, you know, when you were saying action items for places, what about not giving them any action items and divesting? Is that a real option? Is that one that any of us, I feel like everybody here is entertained that or is doing that on some level. If you started your own magazine, you're the editor-in-chief, Mo. You divested. That's what happened. Like, yeah. You were just like, you know, they could have these action steps, or I could just be that. I could just be the institution that I wish I worked at.
It was literally that week. Yeah, it was the week that I had pitched. Well, answer in 7 days. It was literally that week that I put the idea to the rest of my team, Nick's Horror Collective, because it's a democracy. It's like, this is what we should be doing. We're not doing a film festival this year. I'd like to put this under our umbrella. We always have the fellowship. I just want to keep, you know, be a Hydra eventually, us doing a lot of things. And they were like, yeah, like we have to, you know, a way to talk about, you know, more of who we represent and give the accessibility out there, because giving somebody a byline isn't hard at all. at this point in time, like we're such a new magazine. We only started in November. So we're working on our sponsorship so we can pay our writers, because that's not, sometimes that's people's business model. We just don't, just upfront, we don't pay you, which is not something that I want to be forever here, but I'm also, you know, a realist and know that I try to keep the lights on myself. So I understand there's not a huge rush to people, you know, sharing their analysis and things like that. But yeah, I was just like, you know what, these are the stories that I wanted to talk about. This is our magazine is not a constant content churn. Like we don't have like news every day. We have news every Friday. Like we are a weekly magazine. Because I feel like just having to do that churn of like, you got to give me 2,000 words, you know, at least 16 of them, 16 articles every day or every other day, like in order to keep this hamster wheel going. And I feel like that's excellent that you have that kind of consumption. But like, to your point, Wi-Moto, we're glazing over that article or that content that we're not really taking it in. So I wanted it to be slower and, you know, more analysis, more critique, more looking into the art itself and who's actually behind it, as opposed to, you know, stroking somebody off, really, honestly. Not what we're here to do for the magazine. But I had to pull away because that week I was like, I'm so tired. This is literally the 16th pitch that I've done in the last 3 months that I've gotten 2 responses of. And it's in that same quarter of the year, I pitched an article got accepted, wrote the article, sent the article, invoiced for the article, got paid for the article, but the article never went up. So I was just like, is this hush money? like what is this? Like, you paid me for it. So like, where is it? And it was, you know, talking about the 30th anniversary of a show, like it was, or not a show, a film that had to do with, incidentally, a film that we watched today, horror films about like the glass child, which is like the child that's invisible to the rest of the family when one sibling is ill or dying or something. And that resentment within like horror movies. And I thought it was pretty poignant, thought it was pretty tangible, because we don't really talk about that kind of stuff, especially around kids. So I, you know, they loved it, thought it was great, and then it never materialized. And I was just still really sore about that. And I was just like, you know what, screw it. We're just gonna make our own magazine. And yeah, and it's been going really well. And I've actually gotten a praise from the outlet that didn't publish the article, which makes me laugh. So yeah, I mean, there's that.
Yeah,
I did pull away.
Yeah, Dusky Projects, I became an LLC just last month. So it's like officially Dusky Projects is an LLC, because I had to, in post-production on my short film, I had to figure out some payroll magic. That was a whole learning curve. I was like, wow. So, and all of that is absolutely divesting. It's just like, I don't actually even want to try. I don't want to give you any of my ideas. I don't want to even have this conversation anymore. I don't even want to feel bad about it. I just want to just move on. So like, I do wonder about, you know, Dani was talking about these layoffs and this huge reckoning and shift and rupture. And it's because I think like these systems don't work. They're falling apart in real time. And it is very scary, but it's also an opportunity for all of us to be like, well, why don't we just build the Wakanda? Like, why don't we just do it? And I wonder about what I feel that people have the motivation. I feel like we have everything we need. Everybody, what is that saying? Everything is already in the room. Like everything you need is already in the room, that phrase. So I'm like, okay, we already have it. And I do wonder what's going to happen when we finally do that, when instead of constantly pitching and being like, will you accept this? People just stop looking at them. Like what happens when the audience is getting what they want from someplace else? And then they have to then, like, what happens then? I just wonder like about that space. And as people who are creative and, you know, imaginative and visionary about like maybe steering the ship that way. to that
Listen.
future.
Listen, I think the biggest thing is people just denied resources and funding because like there's no way I can be like, I'm starting a magazine tomorrow, please sponsor me, all these places, and they'll be like, who are you again? And so I definitely I understand that I am a privileged little bitch because I have this job at Dread Central which pays like my rent. I have side gigs and those are at smaller places, but those smaller places are run by like brown people, which is amazing because they will find a way to pay you something and they will be upfront about it. Like there's none of this. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention the other place that I'm about to talk shit about, but I'm going to talk shit about them. After I've been at Dress Central for about a year, maybe a year and change, I was like, I have enough bylines in horror specifically. I'm going to pitch out and about and see who's doing what. And one of the places I wrote, which is a bigger place, I was just like, hey, here's my stuff. Here's a couple articles. Let me know what else you need for consideration. If you're looking for new people or contributors, whatever you. And they were like, we'd love to have you, but we don't pay people to write online. But that's how we get to know your work. So you write a few articles for us online and then maybe make it to the magazine. And I was like, no. I don't write for free anymore. As Cardi B says, I don't dance. I make money moves. And so I took the idea I was going to give them to Fangoria. And I had my first Fangoria byline and it was easy peasy beautiful. They pay you, like they pay bi-weekly. So I got paid for it went up, but I knew it was going to go up because I knew what date it was going up and it was an amazing experience. And so had those people not been shady, I probably wouldn't have pitched Fangoria and got my first byline there. So I guess I'm grateful they're awful, but also that model of you should write for us for free because you should be so lucky to be here.
Yeah, we're not doing probationary periods anymore. What are you talking about?
The internet is free. I had a Medium and a Buy Me a Coffee. My Buy Me a Coffee is paying for my phone. I'm not going to write for free for somebody, especially when you want like 1,000 words. Like, I'm just, you shouldn't ask anybody that, but specifically somebody who's been doing it for a minute. Because back when I didn't know any better, I took that abuse. I was like, I get a free ticket. Yay. Now I know better. And once you know better, you do better. To quote Maya Angelou, I will not go back to that life. If you can't pay, what are you doing? What are you giving to make it?
Knowing your worth is hard for people to swallow too, because if the pushback of being like, no, I won't do that, doesn't carry the same shame as it used to. Like, you're throwing this opportunity away. You're going to be really sorry about that. And it's like, no, I'll just be somewhere else. I'll start my own magazine. Who cares? But I think that might be a thing that's like shying people away, is that you have a lot of wise, learned people that are doing really great journalism and essays and deep dives and analysis, and then people being like, well, can you take this for it? Or maybe we won't use it, or let's see what else you've got, or, you know, do you have something? Here's an assignment. Like, no, like, no, we're not doing that. I didn't sign up for an assignment. This is weird. Because I just feel like that's just, it's not the world anymore. It's like unpaid internships. Like, nobody is chasing that. Stop trying to put it in the literary world. It doesn't work.
Yeah, but we're the last of the unpaid labor, free labor generation, and the older generations, oh, they hate that. They're like, why don't you want to take the abuse that we took? I took the abuse and you see how I turned out. I mean, they're not saying it that way, but
they are saying it.
Some are, right? Some are, and then some are saying it that way. Some sort of pithy retort, finger wag way, right?
They like to be like, you chose that, so why should you eat? I'm like, because I'm a human. I deserve food and nourishment. I'm sorry.
Yeah, millennials and Gen Z, like we're the generation that'll walk like in a moment, like without even hesitating, because we see the avalanche right before. You know, like we're the mass shooter generation, right? We're the pandemic generation. We're all of these like horrific generations like compiled into one. But I know one thing that I think, I know we're not all old, right? I think we're all like in our 30s, I think 20s. Anybody in their 20s still?
I've
Oh,
worked at 25 for a while now, and I'm going to stay there. So yes.
okay. All right, 20s. All right.
I turned 46 this year.
Work.
You're a liar.
That's that melanin. See, I don't know how old. I don't know how old. I don't know how old anyone is here.
I'm 43, so.
See, I was like, oh, everybody's in
Looking
their
good.
20s, 30s in here.
But
like,
still, of that generation,
Yeah.
like that's still the span, and that's still the, to your point, Dani, that is the divide. And then just going back to my point of like divesting in these systems, it's like you cannot convince somebody who, I've been, I'm sure you've all had these conversations where you're trying to explain like, well, the math just isn't mathing. Like you did that work and then you were rewarded. You get to retire. You got to buy a house. You got to earn a living that covered your rent and your food. So you got to leave college without crippling debt. You got to do these things. So it made sense for you to pay your dues, right? Like, because there was in fact a payoff. That's not happening anymore. So people are walking because there's no incentive. It's just do this, suffer indefinitely until I'm rich and you're dead. And it's like, well, that's not exciting.
Not really. That's sweetening the pot like that. Because it's my mother's generation is working, the 25, 30 years getting the pension. And then, but that time you're exhausted. And then our retirement age keeps going up and up and up. Which sounds no signs of slowing down.
Yeah.
And that's tough. So, I mean, giving people a living wage should not be rocket science. But also, and this is coming from the mouth of somebody who currently cannot pay their writers. So I understand the irony. But I feel like it's hard to ask somebody to give a really large chunk of output to run your ship. And then we're still sitting, deep under the bottom of the ship. We're like scraping the barnacles off the side, hoping for a little crust of bread at the end of the day. Like we can't keep asking that of people. So yeah, I mean, we're always going to go somewhere else. We're fine with being like, you won't? Okay, somebody will. And that confidence really brushes people the wrong way. Like to what you were saying, Sharai, my mom had said the same thing to me. Like also the word little is people like to use it. How's your little article going? How's your little freelance? Everybody tends to. How's your little writing going? How's your little writing career happening?
Are you still doing the writing thing?
I'm lucky that my parents are not those people, and then the rest of my family just doesn't even understand what I do. I get a lot of like, what do you do? So like they're enthusiastic and they're very proud, but they don't know what it is. They're just like, I don't know, but we're proud of her. Like that, like blank, not understanding, because it's like the days of like, I do this one thing is also over. Everybody does multiple jobs because nobody can live off one job. So again, I'm just like back to these failing systems where it's like, you want me to talk about things, but you want me to think about it and talk about it in this way, but the system that would even allow that to happen isn't even around anymore. Like I can't get the job that then is going to give me the benefits that then is going to let me retire and get a pension. That job doesn't exist. Companies aren't offering that. They're laying people off. That's what's happening. And hiring robots. So
I can't call Tyler Perry to produce my film either. So stop asking me.
Did anybody here see Strange Loop when it was on? Because he had a running joke in that show about do you know what the musical is about?
I've heard of it.
No, I've heard of it.
Him for the award too, for the Tony.
Yeah, so like it's like a meta, so it's like about a composer trying to doing exactly what we're doing, pitching like I want to write a musical about these things, and having like he has like actors play the folks that are giving him critique on his script and libretto, and it's very reminiscent of this whole conversation. But that is what the musical is about. It's just him being this Black queer composer trying to make a Black queer musical in a place that like doesn't want it. And anyway, one of the things, he has somebody impersonating his mother, various different people in his family, and they ask the same thing, where it's just like, when are you going to start working for Tyler Perry? When are you going to write a musical for Tyler Perry? When are you going to do a thing for Tyler Perry? And he's always like, that's not who I am. And then finally in the last act, he was like, all right, you want to see a Tyler Perry musical? I'll give you a Tyler. And then does like this, the same content of what they've been talking about being like a Black queer man, as through the lens of like a Tyler Perry-esque musical. Like that's what happens.
Oh wow, this is like American fiction. This is like American Fiction, the new movie that's just come out.
Yes,
like the fact that now we're seeing more. And speaking of giving Black people the opportunity to tell their own stories, right? That we're telling those stories that like that's not the lane that I want to be in. That like a preconceived notion of like, well, this is a Black artist who is successful, but like, well, what were they successful at? What was the project that they produced, right? I think something else, since we're in the spirit of honesty, when I mentioned earlier about our age, I just had to kind of, I always reminisce whenever I write. I think about those that have been writing before me, before us, right? That before the digital world that we live in, how much harder the hurdle was for them to clear, whether that was inside or outside of academia. And like, are you doing it for the money or are you doing it for the work? Are you doing it because you're an artist and you have to write, or you have to paint, or you have to draw, or you have to make this movie, or you know what I mean? So like, that's always like in the back of my mind, that like this work is always going to be hard. That the only way you can survive is like if you don't compromise, that you may lose opportunities, you may lose things. But I found that like the biggest driver, and like I said, we're a new generation of people, of folks, or maybe we're our ancestors, but like in new packaging. I think we just say things differently than they might have said it, but it's the same word, right? That like, as long as your moral and your ethical center remains true, like that's another thing that I think keeps us pushing doing this. Because beyond us being writers, as you mentioned, Wi-Moto, we're educators. That like we had people that planted seeds in us to do this work, right? To go out on a limb, to somehow put your thoughts out in the universe and like it make coherent sense, right? That to put it in book form, right? So like, I think one of the things, if there are any like people that are trying to dip their toe into the writing field, I think, if there is anybody listening, I'm going to tell you, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. It's going to be maybe a little traumatic. Like we've mentioned, like you may have people that are some kind of phobic towards you or some kind of ist. So like prepare, just like prepare, because it will come. And when it does, don't let it demoralize you. And more than anything, for your mental health's sake, have some things outside of your work. Have things outside of your work if you can. And your work friends aren't your friends. So have things outside of your job. Have things outside of sometimes you know what I mean? Sometimes close the phone, close the laptop, and like walk away. So I think also in that age group that we didn't all grow up with technology. So we know how to not have it. Like you're mentioning, like we know how to read. And that, you mentioned it both, Mo and Wi-Moto, that like it's not a coincidence or just some kind of fluke that we're seeing teachers in the K through 12 that are talking about the fact the kids not just can't read, but like you mentioned, can't infer, don't understand what they're reading, don't have anything to connect the reading to. So the fact that we're having some states with escalating book bans while other states are reinforcing, oh, no, we're going to have books. You know what I mean? And now we're going to have a lopsided society, right? That won't know how to read, won't know how to get their news from a credible source. Oh, shoot. See, I'm talking about reading the news. The fact we read the news. I read the news. Okay. I guess that's an old people thing. Like not going to a blog to read the news. Like oh boy. Whew, that's another conversation.
It's a skill. These are all skills somebody taught you.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. You arrive at this point in your life and you realize like, oh, I don't know. I don't do this just because I'm special. I'm gifted and I know how to do, like somebody taught me that. And so are people being taught that, you know? And if not, like, why don't they have access to that? Why are they firing the teachers or making it impossible for them to say so that they cannot, in fact, imbue these skills, like actually just show people like, this is how you do it, you know? But yeah, to your point, and I love that you're saying, you know, speaking directly to the listeners of like, if you want to do it, you can still do it. I think in some ways it's super hopeful because we all exist. So, and there's more of us. And so for anybody who is coming up, like, just like full circle of like, look, that person is there. They're a little exclamation point. And so I can exist too. So like, there's always going to be that. There's always going to be that young person who sees you and is like, I want to do that. And they will have a way of doing that because you walked and created a path following the other person who walked and created a path, and so on and so on and so on and so on. So I do think that there's hope. I want to focus on that, especially in this year because it's an election year.
Oh,
to piggyback off of both of you, because this is kind of the last question. What do you want to say to people coming behind us? To piggyback both of those, I think that there is something to figuring out who you are and sticking true to that. For instance, I had no idea my article would be accepted at Dread Central when I pitched it. I knew Mary Beth vaguely through Twitter because all of us sort of know each other through Twitter. And then you have those side conversations every once in a while, but you don't know anybody. I could be doing all kinds of weird shit in here and nobody knows. And so when I sent my article, I was like, if y'all don't want it, no big deal. You just seem cool on Twitter, but I have my Medium, I buy me a coffee, and I'm good. Because I didn't think anybody was going to publish anything about wanting more POC horror critics in the space because we need them. And so I sent it in and I was like, if I hear back from her, that's cool. If I don't, that's what everybody else is doing. And so she got back to me and was like, we can publish this tomorrow and here's what we pay. Is that cool? I'm like, yes. And that's how I got my job. But like that, had I been like, I wonder what they want from me, I wouldn't have come in with people having an idea of who I am and what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do. And so I think that you have to figure out who you are and what you're about. So you're putting that forward. So at least you're getting rejected on your own merit. And that's shitty, but I know. Or you're getting accepted because of your own merit. And if you change, make sure you're changing because you want to, as opposed to, I think this is what is working for everybody else. So let me try that. Because the people who don't have personalities are the people nobody wants to work with. And I don't mean nobody as in like the outlets. I mean the people who are your community. Like when I see somebody out and about and I'm like, you phony, I don't invite them to things. I don't want to talk to them. I'm not like, let me go read their new article. That's going to be somebody else's opinion. That's not exciting. That's my right on that. Who else? Mo, did you have a tidbit you wanted to share to other freelancers before we?
Sure. Sure. Just to piggyback off of what you were saying is just, I want really have a strong boundaries too. Because you are allowed to push back on things. Like it's okay to also have your own opinion and not immediately to conform to notes or your critiques and of your own work. Obviously there's style guides and things like that you have to follow, but I want you to consider pitching and things like dating. You're going to learn who to say no to really quickly by how they respond to your own boundaries and likes, dislikes, and everything else. And it's okay to walk away from that. It might be an art, it might be an outlet that you're super hopeful to get into and you see the best in, and then you see the man behind the curtain and it's like 3 mice in a coat and it just doesn't work. It's okay to walk away from that. It's okay to walk away from that, but just hold your boundaries, you know, as best as you can. If you're sharing a personal essay, an op-ed, a critique, it's okay that you're critiquing something. And you can know when to say no, when it starts to kind of vibrate your moral center, with being like, I feel like somebody really needs to check this particular thing. And they keep telling me to just be really soft, or can I take this out and take this out? If it really pulls down the spirit of your article and it feels less like you wrote it, or you wrote it for someone or through somebody else's voice, then you don't have to hand that article back in. And I'm telling you this as someone who's like, you know, has to eat ramen for months and months just because, you know, you're trying to make some shit stretch. And sometimes you got to do that. Easy peel oranges, superb. Canned olives, stellar. Like, find out where the fiber and nutrients are going to come for your buck. And if this is what you really want to do, it is going to be slow. Some outlets will be like, it's $25. Some outlets will be like, it's $150. Sometimes it is a feast or famine business. But if you really want to stick with it, then number one, know your worth. Stick with what you really want to write with, unless your job is you're going to write on these. We need a piece on these 3 things this week. Write in your own voice. Don't write to be somebody's buddy, to feel like whoever you're going to be writing about. Like, I can guarantee you, if I wrote an article about Mike Flanagan that was absolutely glowing, he's not going to call me up and be like, Mo, that was really sweet, thanks. We're not friends. I don't have to get on anybody's good side. So like I said, just be really, you know, stick to your guns, stick to your boundaries, stick to your own center. Eat cheap.
I like how we stuck a positive landing for all of this. Yay! We have a button to work with. Let us just go back around and just sort of remind the people where they can find us on the internet, because we went through a lot of things and they might have been agreeing and forgot to write that down. Let's start with Dani. Where can the people find you on social media one more time?
Okay. Twitter only. Twitter. Notice I said Twitter, not the other thing. Twitter, where the horror resides, at the Dani Bethea, DaniBethea. And my links to Medium are there, and you can also Google me, because I think at this point I'm gonna just, you know, pop my collar. I don't think we do that enough. That, you know, eventually you write enough, you panel enough, you podcast enough, your name will make it on the internet. You're going to be on some YouTube things. You're going to be out there. So also just Google me, lovely people.
And we're going to bounce it to Mo.
Sorry. I was just like, yay, Dani, this is great. You can find me at Mo Moshaty. I'm at Mo Moshaty on Instagram and on Twitter, because now we're saying it and we're not sorry about it. So I'm there. Also at Nyx Horror on Twitter, which is my organization, Nyx Horror Collective. And also you can find me being the editor-in-chief on nighttidemag.com.
I'm Wi-Moto Nyoka, and you can find me on Instagram at Dusky Projects, just like in the little thing here that you see on the screen. So yeah, that's where I am. And then my website is my name, just as one long word. Yes, include the hyphen.com. And that's where everything I've ever written, the podcast, which won an award last year. We won an Ignite Award. Black Women Are Scary won an Ignite Award. It's very exciting for Best Fiction Podcast. So if you want to hear new authors and new scary stories, and yeah, just finding out about any of the upcoming projects and events that we have. I update my website regularly. So
I have to learn that. I have been Miss Sharai. That's how you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. There are 3 S's. I see that as a problem now, and I didn't when I made that handle. You can find my work at Dread Central. I have a few podcasts. We're not going to get into that because if you find me, you'll find them because I'm always pushing them. Thank you for joining us for this Black Freelancer panel. Follow all of the panelists because, again, like, these are brilliant people doing brilliant things, and you want more brilliance in this shitty world. I'm just going to say it. It's a shitty world. Read some smart things. You're welcome. This is one of many panels that are coming through this Black History Month at Dread Central, and it's always a good time. I think that this is the 3rd year in a row. Yes, this is the 3rd year in a row that Girls That Scary and Dread Central have tag teamed to, like, show you where all the cool people in the horror community are. So you can stop being like, I don't know where the Black people are. We're everywhere. But also, here's a very nice focused viewpoint on some of us. These 28 days, is it 29 days this year? I think it's a leap year. I should look into that. We're out here now, and I said it. So let's all pretend I didn't say it if I'm wrong. Thank you again for watching this panel. Thank you again for being on this panel. Enjoy Black History Month and Black History Year, because every day is Black History. Yay!